In time.
Hello, Casper. How was your wine trip?
Oh, the wine trip was pretty good. Portugal is really beautiful. Having a bit too much wine is bad for jet lag. These are the key takeaways I've learned. I've been chugging a lot of coffee to keep awake.
You sound pretty relaxed.
Yeah, for now, I might collapse.
Is that the sedating effect of alcohol?
Yep, I think so.
I see that Eric's here, so let's start space now. Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Angel Swing Weekend Chat with June here from the Angel Swing account. And we also have our co-hosts Casper, Espresso, Johannes, and Robble here today. And our guest today is Eric Rhodes. He is back to talk more in depth about his art and journey. And before we start, let's hear the genesis story and mission of Angel Swing from our co-host Casper first.
Sure. Thanks, Yun. We are the Angels Wing, an international NFT art gallery and podcast show founded by international friends who met through our beloved Metal Angels project. Espresso, Johannes are from Europe. Yun and myself, we are not from Europe, but we are situated physically in Europe right now because of our travels. Rebels from Asia. We are driven by our common passion to showcase independent artists and their art and helping them stand out from the crowded NFT market that's pretty much dominated by generative 10K PFP projects. We showcase the art in an on-cyber virtual gallery with the logic that a larger collection of art brings a cross-pollination of viewership, and that has certainly helped quite a few of our artists reach collectors through sales. We have organically grown since into a community of artists and collectors, but most importantly, friends. With regular Twitter spaces like these, which are then recorded into podcast formats in Spotify and YouTube. The easiest way, of course, to get in touch with us would be to join our cozy Discord. Everything's on our link tree in our bio, so hit us up if you're an indie artist who needs help featuring your art, or if you just want to join a friendly art NFT community. Last but not least, we'd like to mention that nothing on this show should be construed as investment advice. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Thanks, Yoon. Back to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Caspar. So, hi, Eric. Welcome back to our Angel Swing space. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving weekend or a couple days off.
I did. Thank you.
Yeah, so in a previous episode, we talked about the trash art movement you helped pioneering. And since that time, you've been very prolific in creating art and you've developed different styles of art in terms of aesthetics. I wonder if you try to connect the dots in retrospect, kind of, what do you think were some of the key events or decisions in your life that led you to the path you are now on?
So that led me to the path that I'm on right now.
Well, maybe just start with the story about the art school you went to against your will.
Sure. Well, I studied art in high school. It was pretty much the only class that I really enjoyed. It's where I got a lot of great mentoring and leadership and personal growth from teachers. And even just being a shy kid who was an introvert, it was the place I was able to shine. So art, I was kind of talented in, and I wasn't sure I really wanted to go to art school. In fact, I kind of knew I didn't want to go to art school. But one day, there was a local state university here called Rutgers University, and my father had pretty much asked me to apply, but I knew I wasn't going. So I applied anyway. And I got into the art school, which only accepts a limited number of students per year. And I had beepers when I had a beeper when I was in high school. So he beeped me 911, and I had to call him back. So I called him back, and he's like, "You just got your acceptance letter to Rutgers." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." You know, really nonchalant. I didn't really think about it too much. And he's like, "Aren't you excited?" And I said, "No, I'm not really that excited." He said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going." And he said, "Yes, you are." And so the decision was made for me to go to a large state university, a place that I ended up not really succeeding in and failing pretty much due to the size of the school. So yeah, it was pretty much ordained to me by my father that I was going to go to art school, and I wasn't sure I ever wanted to be an artist. I knew I was good at art. Art was something for me to, it was an escape from my anxiety and my depression. It wasn't something that I thought I would be a professional at. And here I am 20 something years later, being a full-time professional artist after a career in tech and book publishing. So it's kind of interesting that it all worked out in some weird way.
But if you could choose right now, would you go back to art school? I mean, from your perspective right now, do you think you would enjoy that time more?
No, I don't think so. I think I would go back to school and study a subject that I thought was like super interesting. I mean, business or psychology, and then do art as a minor. I never felt like I needed to be taught to be an artist. It was something I intuitively always knew. I never felt like I needed to be taught how to draw. I never really felt like I needed to be taught how to create, how to be creative. These were things that were innate in me. So maybe I would probably want to take some cool art classes, but I don't know if I would go back full time. I do regret not having my degree. I have an associate's degree. I don't have a bachelor's. That's something that's always driven me in my professional career because I had to spend a lot of time earning my spot professionally. I feel this way in the NFT space too. I feel like I always have to work harder to earn where I am. So in a way, not finishing school and not completing my bachelor's degree, which put me on a weird path, taught me the power of resilience and the power of belief. Because in tech, working at Twitter and Google, you spend time working with a lot of people who go to really fancy schools, engineers or MBAs that went to Harvard or Stanford or whatever. I always felt like I had to prove that I belonged in the room. And I felt I had a little bit of imposter syndrome because of that. And so I always worked super, super hard. Still do to this day. I always believe that I don't want to say like the best in the room. That's not really a great way to put it. It's sort of like I believe I could beat anybody because I know I'll work anybody. And so as an artist, I believe that I'll be successful one day and be in, the Met, the MoMA, have my art sold at Christie's. These are things that I believe one day will happen. I believe that because I know I'm going to work harder than anybody else. That may not be true, right? Other people might work harder than me, but I'll always feel like as long as I'm working as hard as I possibly can, those goals are achievable.
Yeah, that goes back to the mindset that you have to believe in yourself no matter what, right? So you actually studied computer science. I remember that you said that there was a mentor during your studies who kind of encouraged you in a way that kind of led you back onto this artistic path. Do you want to share a bit about that story?
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting because I actually left college, failed out a couple times, and decided to go back again. And I was going back to community college, like a smaller local school. And I wanted to take art again, but their art program had been defunded. And there was this class called web design. And it was the only design class on the, that were available. So I was told the only way that I could take that class is if I was a computer science major. And I was like, okay, I'll be a computer science major. I had no idea what that was. I never coded in my life. I never built computers, never did anything. I was mostly like an art sports jock kind of dude. But what I found is I was quite good at it. I was good at math. I was really good at math. I was really good at understanding the logic behind programming. So it came to me quite easy. And I ended up earning a scholarship to Seton Hall University. And while at Seton Hall, and what you're alluding to is my mentor and now friend of 20-something years, Tony Caparelli. He's a well-known sports artist. I was in his color drawing class, and he had suggested to me that I stick with the technology instead of just going back to art school. He had foreseen, and this is what, 2005, right? So this is pre-social media. Well, it was like the dawn of social media. But he had seen something that I had not seen, which was how technology would impact our lives. And he recommended to me that I stick with technology. And I did. So I sort of found that I could merge the tech and art world and do this thing called web design professionally. And that's how I found sort of my path ultimately, which led me from being a web producer to a web designer to a graphic designer to user experience designer to customer experience designer, and then ultimately closing out the last chapter in tech as a service design program manager. So I can't say looking back that it was intentional. I can't say looking back that I intended to find a path that merged both art and technology. That would be a completely wrong read of how I discovered my path. If you imagine when we look back at our past, we sort of see like linear choices, but when we're going through it, it's a lot of ups and downs. And that's what I consistently remember are the ups and downs. And I think I don't look at my past with rose-colored glasses and like see the success of all my choices. I see a mixture of success and failure and how I became who I am today. Certainly all those choices and some that were made for me and some that I had been guided towards helped make who I am today for sure. And looking back, I wouldn't go back and change any of it because I like where I am in life. I like who I am today. I don't think I could have become the person I am in this moment without having gone through all of the things that I've been through, good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, as you said, even hardships in life is just contribute to kind of your story and make the person you are today. So during these 3 or 4 years since you entered the NFT space, you experienced a lot of changes, personal changes, growth, and everything. You created the second and the outer realms, these 2 entities that are part of your artistic journey. How do they relate to each other, and why did you choose these names?
Yeah. So why did I choose Second Realm? It kind of chose me. And the term Second Realm, or the name Second Realm, or the idea of Second Realm has been with me since I'm 14 years old. I am 44 now, so it's been with me for 30 years. And I was a quiet, anxiety-ridden, depressed kid that was living in a culture of Northeast New Jersey American culture where the idea was that the male had to suck it up and just be a man, or there were these like societal ideals of who you're supposed to be: loud, you're supposed to be tough, you're supposed to be, alpha male. And that never fit for me. I was always more in touch with my feminine energies. So I was always introverted. I was always the art kid, quiet, didn't know how to express myself, which is where Second Realm comes from. So I sort of discovered surrealism. And through surrealism, I discovered that I can create these worlds. And so Second Realm became the name I gave to the world inside my head, the world that I was actually living in, the one that nobody got to see. And the first realm was the one that I was walking through like a zombie. And so trying to fit into a box, a social, societal, cultural box that I never felt I really belonged in. And so it was really a mechanism for me to protect the person that I was. And I did that through art. I did that by creating these surrealistic environments to express how I was feeling inside. And that's where the Second Realm comes from. It ultimately stays with me for 30 years and it evolves. I had always wanted it to be my art studio name, but I had given up on art as a career. So I think I believed when I was 14 I could be an artist. And by the time I turned 18, the real world smacked me and said, you need to get a real job. I'll never forget my mother. One day, she was very proud of me that I got into college. But she followed that up with, and she would hate that I'm talking about this because she would feel embarrassed. But we're sitting in our kitchen, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I was excited I was going to college. I never believed I could probably get into college. I got into art school, and she was like, well, what are you going to do with an art degree? And I literally had no answer. And as a shy, introverted kid who thought he was finally on a path, that sort of, knocked me down a peg. And so between 18 and 28, I gave up on the idea of having my own art gallery or being an artist and showing my stuff in what would become the Second Realm Gallery. And so it stood with me for a while. And as I got into the web world, I was mindful enough to protect the idea. So I registered the domains. I don't know. I guess some part of me still believed that I could be something someday. And as I got into, like, at the end of my tech life in 2018, I had already discovered NFTs and crypto and all that stuff. And I was anonymous. And I was anonymous as Second Realm on Twitter. And that felt safe to me, being Second Realm anonymous, because it was an expression of who I was. And I just rediscovered art again through therapy, and like rediscovered how important it was for me as a personal being to sort of express myself over and over and create this world of Second Realm. And so I just continued to use it anonymously. And so Second Realm became the actual manifestation of who I was as I moved into the NFT space. I went from anonymous to pseudonymous to switching completely and doxing myself 100% to Eric Rhodes. And at that point, there was an evolution where Second Realm became a name I hid behind, and it became the business that I run. So Second Realm is a registered business in the state of New Jersey as an LLC, and it is my art studio, essentially. So it eventually became the thing that I had always hoped it would 30 years ago, which is really interesting. And so the outer realm, if the Second Realm is the manifestation of the world inside my head as an artist, the outer realm is like bringing the outside world in, like we're doing here, interviewing and talking about our lives and introducing people to the things I'm interested through my perspective. So where the inner realm is an expression of my inner world, the outer realm is sort of like bringing the outer world into my realm.
Yeah, so basically, if I can say so, you created your own world initially to kind of process your mental health issues. Do you feel
Absolutely.
that during these years where you started to make art again, also as part of therapy, do you feel that you managed to get your anxiety more into control?
Yeah. So the way that I explain it, it's sort of like anxiety and depression is still there, but imagine you're walking through life and there's this cloud around your head for since I was 5 years old, I'd always known it was there. So you're talking almost 40 years. By the time I started getting medicinal and therapeutic help, I was 37. So it was 32 years of living with anxiety and depression, mostly quietly, because it just wasn't something that we talked about. And when I went on to medicine, I'm on Lexapro. It started to change my life. I have 2 therapists now. We can get into that too if you want. The idea is like anxiety and depression is still there, but the cloud's been lifted. It's been lifted above my head, and now I could sort of see the world in which I live. And I know it's there. It's not as heavy as it used to be. Is it manageable? It's more manageable than it ever was. The more I talk about it, the more I embrace it, the more I learn to understand what triggers me. Things get better. They always do. But did it go away? No, I don't know if it'll ever fucking go away. But it doesn't matter that it goes away. What matters is that I continue to learn to understand it. And that's what I've gained from therapy. And I've also gained, like, there's medicine out there that can really sort of change your life. I didn't think taking a pill would change the way in which I could live a more exciting life. Like, I'm still an introvert. Being an introvert means that after we're done with this podcast, I will need to recharge. So I will step away and find a way to recharge. I get energy by being away from people. And so Where in the past, that might have exacerbated my anxiety. It doesn't, because I've been able to parse out all of these aspects where before I was riddled with such deep anxiety that everything felt intense. And so through therapy and through medicine, I'm able to sort of like learn how my body works, how my mind works. I hope I answered your question. I think I went on a tangent there.
Yeah, totally. You answered totally. So you basically just learn to observe yourself more and deal with everything, and just accept the situation as part of yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
acceptance is really interesting. And I don't think I've been put that way for me quite yet. But yeah, there is a level of acceptance here. But it's not acceptance to complacency, which I guess could happen. The work I do with my therapist is like acceptance to growth and acceptance to acknowledgement, which continue to help me move forward.
Casper, do you have a question?
Yeah, Eric, thanks for sharing very personal stories that link back to your art. I totally identify with this need to reach out because I'm an introvert myself and my wife is an extrovert. So we always have conversations about how activities have to be balanced between us. So I totally get that. My question is more going back a little bit to connecting the dots in your life. Firstly, have you ever thought about how different it would be if you were in a different environment in terms of a personal environment with your parental influence, your family influence, being in a country like the US, which supports a little bit more of uh, a flexibility in terms of a career versus I come from Asia, so Asian culture where, it's always the struggle between following your passion versus doing something that gives you your paycheck. And I think that's what you alluded to in terms of your struggle between pursuing art versus your tech job. I hope I kind of got that nuance right. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Like, did you ever think about how things would have gone differently in other circumstances?
Of course. Yeah. Spent most of my life struggling with the regret that I never lived up to an ideal. That was one of the key drivers in like my ever deepening anxiety, was this idea that I was never successful enough for myself or on the right path for myself. So yeah, I grew up in a very loving, family oriented environment. And for all the things, like if there was one flaw in all of it, it was the idea that something was wrong with me, was something that they didn't want to believe or didn't want to believe was true. And when I say wrong with me, it's like, when I talked to my mother today, or, my father had just passed 6 months ago. So, we've had a lot of adult conversations about all of this. And so they just thought that I was a quiet kid. And because I didn't know how to express myself, they didn't think anything was wrong, or they didn't know that anything was wrong. And when I say anything was wrong, I was like riddled with such deep anxiety that would become depression. And I've learned for me, sort of anxiety is like thinking about the future, is sort of like worrying about the future in a really intense way. And depression tends to be worrying about the past in a really intense way. And I never knew how to be present in the present moment. So I spent a lot of my life living in the past or in the future, never knowing how to express any of that. And I wouldn't change anything about the way I grew up, but I do think about the what ifs. Like, what if I had found Lexapro, the medicine I'm on, and gone to therapy at 14? Could I have been a much more confident 21-year-old or 28-year-old? Like, I didn't end up finding my professional career until I was 28 years old. So I spent 10 years between 18 and 28 working all kinds of jobs, working any number of delivery jobs, being told I should get a job, become a police officer for 20 years and then follow my dreams, or become a firefighter, or work for public service, or, things like that. That's the kind of family I grew up in. So blue collar, work hard, raise a family, and I love that I come from that, but it never fit in my soul I didn't understand why, but I do now because my soul's purpose has always been to create art and to connect others and to learn new things. And I believe that's my mission in life is to create art. But I finally believe that publicly and can express it and know what I mean by that, as opposed to struggling with the idea that I was supposed to be doing something else and I just didn't know what it was. I had always known maybe it would be art, but I didn't believe it. So I guess that maybe the only thing that I would, when I look back, it's not so much regret, but I wish that I could have slowed down my brain enough to recognize just how cool being an artist is.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I hope you didn't get me wrong. I didn't mean to poke around at what regrets you were having, but it's more alluding to my second part of there's always this struggle between choosing your passion versus doing something that puts food on the table. So given your life experiences, like if somebody asks you, do I chase my passion or choose something that just puts food on the table? Would you believe more in the definitely choose your passion and your passion will feed you, or you always try to take a more balanced approach to this question?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky to be in a position I'm in, to grow up in a place where I didn't really have to struggle in the way some people struggle out there in the world. I don't know what that's like. I grew up in a very loving family. I grew up in a privileged place to be able to even consider following my passion as opposed to putting food on the table. I struggle with that though, because I did tech for 20 years to put food on the table. I hated it. Not that I hated it. I just knew it wasn't me, but you have to do what you have to do. I think if the choice is, do I survive and live another day, or do I follow a passion? If it's that binary, you survive and live a day and make money to do that. And then when you're comfortable, live your passion. But I'll say this, if you're a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and you've got the means to be able to explore, I would tell my 18-year-old self, don't go to a big college. I would tell my 18-year-old self, go to a small school and try to follow your passion, But I don't think me at 18 would even understand what that means. I think, to your point, I think it's balanced. It's very situational. I'm able to follow my passion today because I believe so deeply that this is the only path for me. I've never felt this before. Like something inside me is telling me I have to risk it all now, because if I don't, I know I'll regret it. I don't want that. So I'm following it now, but I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Things like finding your purpose in life, as you did, probably gives a meaning in life in general. So yeah, it's wonderful that you feel that you kind of arrived in life. Espresso, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, and to echo Lasper and June here, thank you so much for sharing these details. It's very inspiring and motivational to hear that it is possible to follow your passion and fulfill that passion at some point. It's very relatable. Some things that we're passionate about don't really feel like an option, especially when growing up. Typically, when growing up, you get to hear all of these approved pathways to life. And if you have some kind of wish that's outside of that, you have to put it aside. So that resonates. And my question, you mentioned Second Realm started as a Twitter identity and anonymous identity. And I find that in many occasions, it feels easy to explore passions anonymously, kind of as a double life in a way, without all of the constraints of the real life. Curious to hear your perspective on how that was for you. As you said, you chose to dox yourself at some point, and was that because that was the right thing to do, or the thing you want to do all along?
Sure. So when I discovered the NFT space, it was sort of this quiet corner of the internet where I could practice in public, as I call it. So I could create art that nobody in my life would see. So you're right, there is this, maybe I'll call it a superpower, but there is strength you can gather from practicing in a space where nobody knows you anonymously. I never intended to be a full-time artist when I found the NFT space. I only found the space by happenstance and luck. I just got back into creating art for myself, like using it therapeutically as a way to sort of like decompress and learn about what was going on in my life. At the time, at 30, I don't know how old I was, 39 maybe, or 40 or whatever it was. But the point is, I typed in one day crypto and art into Twitter, and they were talking about crypto art. They weren't even talking about NFTs. They were talking about crypto art. And I was like, what is this crypto art? Super rare. What is this? You mean I could sell my art for crypto? All right, I'll try this. I mean, what the hell? Why not? Nobody's going to know me in this space. And if I fail, that's cool. I just go back to being Eric, the tech guy, right? Or Eric, the whatever I was trying to be at the time. There's a saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I think by that point, I had been in my career in tech and spent a lifetime doing marketing and working in the tech space and learning about tech, that I was finally able to merge these two worlds, but I didn't know what it was yet. So I felt confident enough to be in a space with just 81 followers and start making art for whatever reason, like practicing in public and putting it out there to see if that could be a real thing. And it was. The decision to dox myself was because I became so confident in myself as a creator that I wanted to live as Eric the artist, not an anonymous or pseudonymous person, a second realm artist. But to your point, I feel really fortunate that I was able to do this work. I spent some time studying and learning about Twitter users in Japan as part of my work at Twitter. And what I learned is in Japan, people have many accounts for each of their passions. They also have many Twitter accounts for each of their friend groups. And sometimes those friend groups don't even overlap. So I don't know culturally what that's like, but I do know that through research, that's what I learned when I was trying to understand how we can improve the customer experience, especially the customer service experience for the Japanese culture, for Twitter Japan. And I didn't spend a lot of time traveling the world. So the only culture that I knew was my own. As I started working with more international teams in tech, I started to learn how different cultures use Twitter. And I was like surprised by how separated some of the passions were by users, because they didn't want certain passions to overlap with certain groups. And I came to understand that that's cultural. I don't know what that's like lived, but where I could sort of tie that back into my own experiences, I felt like I had to live this separate life for a little bit because I wasn't sure that it would ever amount to anything. So for me, it was like safety to bucket second realm into this anonymous world. I hope I answered your question. I think I tend to go on tangents.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. And the point about safety and the room to experiment in a way.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
So we have 10 minutes left. I would like to talk a bit about your art, Eric. So the Brutalist Mannequin series, that's kind of your most personal collection. And it is also a bit related to what you've been talking about before, that you grew up in an environment where you have to be in a certain way, be masculine. And so this collection is like an escape into your own world. Do you want to give us a more interpretation of this collection?
Sure. What I would say is all of my art is personal, but what I think you're talking about is the expression behind Brutalist Mannequins. So what am I expressing there? I spent a lot of time doing surrealistic work most of my life. And the reason behind that was I wanted to hide whatever it was that I was expressing in these surrealistic landscapes or figurative works. I wanted to hide myself in it and then allow the viewer to interpret it however they wanted. But I was trying to express something that was coming from inside me in a safe way, in a way that was comfortable enough for me to let it go, and also in a way that I didn't have to explain what it was. So when I look at pieces, many of them people in this space have never seen because all of this work is new, but my old stuff, I know what I was feeling in that moment. I also know that when people look at it, they see something different. And that was its intention. So similarly with the Brutalist mannequins that I did in 2020, I wasn't yet quite comfortable enough with expressing what was going on inside my heart and mind quite publicly. I created the mannequins in a way that it was enough, like it was more public than ever before. But I tend to use female mannequins in my pieces. And the reason for that is I typically represent myself as the female mannequin in the piece. Not always, but most pieces, I represent myself as the female mannequin. And the reason for that is I've always been more connected to my feminine energies most of my life. And so when I'm trying to express something deeply, I tend to use that mannequin for that reason. And so the Brutalist Mannequin series was ultimately a series that expressed the end of my marriage with my ex-wife, who we are now best friends. But it took us a couple years to get there. It was a way for me to work through the pain of ending something that we thought would be together. Now, nobody cheated on anybody. It was just a marriage that ran its course. And that I think is even harder, at least for me, because it's like we can't point to one thing that one person did that ended it. Like there's nobody to blame. The relationship ran its course. And Brutalist Mannequins was, at the time, I thought I was expressing what was going on inside my brain from a mental health perspective. And then a year later, I finally saw the entire collection together and I realized I had told the story of the end of my marriage with my ex-wife, which is sort of weird. But at the time, I was still at the very early stages of my therapeutic experience. So I was still exploring a lot of things that I was learning about myself. Today, I'm creating a mannequin series called the Chromatic Mannequin Series, far brighter in color, but definitely more deliberately an expression of my lived experience. And this time around, I'm not trying to hide that it's me. I'm not trying to hide myself in the piece. I am willingly putting my emotion into it every time that I make them. And one of the reasons that I use the mannequins is because I love the idea of other people projecting themselves into the scene. So the mannequins are always, like 99% of the time, bare. And that's intentional. It's intentional because while I want people to feel the emotion of the piece, I also want them to project either themselves as the mannequin or someone else in their life as the mannequin, or even build a fake story around it. That's fine too. But the point is, I want them to experience it on their terms, not just my terms. I love the duality of that. And so I began using the mannequin aesthetic more deliberately as a result of like my growth in therapy.
So the chromatic mannequins are the works you created on Super Rare, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Like the one that we just append to the space, the fallible piece.
Yeah, which I spelled wrong, and I spelled it as fallible, F-A,
Okay.
which, I love happy accidents like that because it's a double entendre. It's like the angel's wings that appear to be on the mannequin's back. It's not actually attached to the mannequin. It's painted on a wall that looks like the mannequin is walking through a deep space, but it's actually a flat space.
It's kind of fitting to the fact that you're on the Angel's Wing chat.
Yeah, it's a little bit prophetic.
How do you actually create these pieces? I believe these are collages, right?
It's a combination of digital collage, digital painting, and design.
Do you also plan to create like physical pieces in the future?
It's a great question. I have been feeling the itch to, I started my life doing physical pieces, and I still have lots of physical pieces around me. Some pieces have started as physical, scan them in, and then become digital. Not the Brutalist mannequins, but some others out there. Yes. The short answer to your question is absolutely. When? I don't know yet.
I'm totally curious to see your physical pieces because I remember that you've been talking about your dream to exhibit at MoMA, right?
That's right. Yes.
So that's why I'm referring to whether you plan to also create physical pieces.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love the idea of creating like really massive, large scale physical pieces. I also hope to one day do an installation with physical mannequins and sort of like reinterpret paintings that I've created, these digital paintings, as actual spaces, which I think would be kind of cool, but maybe one day.
Yeah, that would be really cool. So it's the end of our space. Do our co-hosts have some questions? No? Okay. Then thank you so much, Eric, for joining our space and sharing so many inspiring and personal stories.
Yeah.
I wish you a happy Sunday, and so you can recharge yourself
That's right.
after our space. And so thank you again, and thank you to our co-hosts and listeners. Have a great Sunday. Bye, everyone.
In time.